I'm Lu Yan from Beijing Review Magazine, and this is the Governance Podcast, a podcast that explores the past, present, and future of governance in China as it works toward meeting its development goals and finds its place in the global community. In ancient China, the rise and fall of dynasties was the norm. As a political party that aspires to govern China for a long period of its future, how can the Communist Party of China, the CPC, transcend this historical cycle? Even before the founding of the People's Republic of China, Chairman Mao Zedong contemplated this question. His answer was, only if it is under the scrutiny of the people will the government not dare to slacken its efforts. In 2021, the centenary of the CPC's founding, President Xi Jinping, also General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, gave a second answer by carrying out self-reform. Xi called on the party to guide social transformation through self-reform and advance self-reform through social transformation. The CPC currently has more than 99 million members, accounting for roughly 7% of China's population. Through the connections around them, such as their relatives, colleagues, friends, and communities, CPC members are in direct contact with a large proportion of Chinese society. To gain some insights into how the party governs itself, I'll be talking to Zheng Huan, a professor of party development at the Party School of the CPC Central Committee in Beijing, and Dr. Robert Lawrence Kuhn, chairman of the Kuhn Foundation in the U.S. A renowned expert in China, he was awarded the China Reform Friendship Medal in 2018 and the Chinese Government Friendship Award in 2019. Zheng Huan and Robert, thank you for joining our podcast. So, what are major differences between the internal governance of the CPC and that of political parties in the West?
Parties are products of political modernization. Since countries follow different paths to modernization, diverse political parties have emerged. The way they operate in a particular country also varies. The existence of liberal political parties in the West is premised on a well-functioning political system. One of their basic function is to curb excessive power centralization through separation of powers in the government, or through checks and balances between the ruling party and the opposition parties. These parties therefore tend to be loosely organized and often divided into multiple factions. After the collapse of the Qing dynasty in 1911, a nationwide political authority was absent in China. As the country attempted to adopt the Western parliamentary system, more than 300 political organizations sprouted up. The head of state, the cabinet, and the parliament changed frequently, leading to severe turbulence. The CPC was born against a backdrop of a dire social crisis, fueled by domestic conflicts and aggression by foreign powers. As a Marxist political party, the CPC practiced democratic centralism, or a combination of democracy for its members and centralized leadership. It also recruits members according to specific standards and subjects them to strict discipline. All this enables the CPC to mobilize rapid, effective, and collective action when China was mired in a social crisis. Liberal political parties, however, lacked these traits and therefore failed to do so. The way the CPC is organized has a major impact on how it carries out self-reform. It necessitates the establishment of a powerful supervisory system that puts power under scrutiny.
What does presidency mean by guiding social transformation through self-reform and advancing self-reform through social transformation?
CPC is the world's largest Marxist governing party. Continuing self-reform while advancing social transformation is essential to the party's success. General Secretary Xi has said China's success hinges on a party, especially on the party's efforts to exercise effective self-supervision and full and rigorous self-governance. Since Xi became the party's top leader in 2012, the party has put self-reform high on its agenda and confronted corruption and other problems head-on. In this process, the party has become more capable of leading China's development. At the same time, the same CPC underlines the importance of practicing what it believes in. As it effects positive change in society, it gains a better understanding of itself, including identifying and correcting incorrect ideas and stereotypes, so that it can craft a more nuanced approach to self-reform.
Thank you for sharing that, Zhenhuan. Robert, what's your take on this question?
For the world to understand China, the world must understand the party's way of thinking. In other words, first, why the CPC asserts that the party's continuing political leadership is optimum for China's development. And second, why the CPC asserts that the party's robustness depends on its adaptability, self-regulation, and strict management. President Xi stresses the theme of not forgetting the party's original intention and keeping in mind the mission, which, she says, is the self-revolution of the party under the new historical conditions. President Xi states that the CPC should be governed by standardized rules and procedures that are open to public oversight. Only by adapting continuously, focusing on real-world issues, can the party construct a truly prosperous society that is sustainable.
In your view, what are the most significant self-reform measures the party has taken in recent years? And what are the most urgent self-reform measures the party must undertake now?
Fighting corruption is the most thorough kind of self-reform there is. Since 2012, the CPC Central Committee has put forward new versions for anti-corruption efforts. It has emphasized that corruption is the biggest threat the party faces, and that preventing and combating corruption is a long-term political task the party must perform well in its self-reform. Over the past decade, the party has punished corrupt officials with zero tolerance. Those expelled from the party and brought to justice included several members of the CPC Central Committee, a body that consists of the party's highest-ranking officials. At the same time, the party has put in place a host of intra-party regulations and anti-corruption rules. Despite progress made, the fight against corruption remains an uphill battle. The 20th CPC National Congress in 2022 and the third plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee in 2024 planned new initiatives such as advancing national anti-corruption legislations and improving party and state oversight systems.
A tough stance against corruption has been one of the hallmarks of Presidency Xi's governance. In your view, what are the major impacts anti-corruption efforts have had on the way the party operates, and what does that mean for China as a whole?
The anti-corruption campaign has had far-reaching implications. On the one hand, it has made the party stronger by resolving severe political risk in the party, the government, and the military. On the other hand, it has won hearts and minds of the general public. A survey conducted by the National Bureau of Statistics in 2022 showed public satisfaction with anti-corruption reached the 97.4%, 22.4 percentage point higher than in 2012.
Thank you for sharing that, Zhenhuan. Robert, would you like to add your thoughts?
The party's relentless anti-corruption campaign, unprecedented under President Xi Jinping. It has won strong public support, and it will certainly continue. I myself am questioned by the media about the anti-corruption campaign, and I'm asked opposing and contradictory questions. International media asked me to confirm that the only purpose of Xi's anti-corruption campaign is political struggle with opposing factions and suppressing political opponents. Chinese media asked me to confirm that the only purpose of Xi's anti-corruption campaign is to punish corrupt officials, and it has nothing to do with political struggle with opposing factions and suppressing political opponents. When Western analysts see Xi's anti-corruption campaign as largely a weapon of political power, it reflects their superficial and one-dimensional perspective of China. Befitting the size and complexity of the country, for almost every decision of importance, China's leaders have multiple motivations or reasons. For the anti-corruption campaign, I can see 10 motivations or reasons. There's nothing magical about 10. There could be more. 1, to state the obvious, officials who are manifestly corrupt are brought to justice. To manage China's huge population and complex society, there must be respect for law and judicial impartiality. 2, by combating corruption, the party increases public trust, augmenting confidence in the party's continuing leadership. 3, by combating corruption, the party functions more effectively, making decisions for the general good, not biased by financial gain. 4, corruption distorts markets, so that by reducing corruption, resources are allocated more efficiently. 5, corrupt officials impede economic reform because change threatens their illicit profits, which depends on the status quo. The removal of corrupt officials facilitates reform. 6, corrupt officials thwart rule of law for personal interests, and prosecuting them strengthens rule of law for national interests. Rule of law is exceedingly important for President Xi. It is the third of his 4 comprehensives, his overarching guidelines for governing China. 7, some corrupt officials, in addition to enriching themselves, have non-standard political ambitions that could destabilize the system. Removing these officials promotes national unity and political stability, which are essential for China. 8, combating corruption benefits China's entire society, elevating morality and restoring Chinese civilization as a paragon of ethics and integrity. 9, for China to become a world business center, China must have world-class business standards and ethics. 10, for China to become a global role model, China must exemplify morality and rectitude.
The CPC's drive to maintain its long-term effectiveness and improve China's governance leads it to undertake continuous internal reform. Are there aspects of this reform that political parties in other countries could draw on as they pursue their own improvements?
Self-supervision is a challenge for political parties worldwide. It is important that they share best practices as well as lessons learned. Many political parties in the West are pushing for reforms such as regulating political fundraising. Some reforms are very limited because of vested interests. The CPC's courage to tackle its own problem is commendable. Its success in maintaining unity within the party and building consensus across society at large, while carrying out self-reform, is also a point of pride. Indeed, there are cases where reform attempts by some political parties are aborted because of the power struggles between different factions.
Thanks for that, Zhonghuan. Robert, how does that compare to what you think?
All political parties, all political systems have trade-offs. And while achieving national objectives is indeed an advantage of China's party-led system, it is not the only criterion for evaluating systems. This is why continuing reform, opening up, and system improvement are needed. Continuing to improve is the same guiding principle that then Zhejiang Party Secretary Xi Jinping told me personally in 2006. It is fair to say that we have achieved successes, she said at that time. Nevertheless, we should have a cautious appraisal of our accomplishments. We should never overestimate our accomplishments or indulge ourselves in our achievements, she stressed. He called for China to aspire to our next higher goal and to appreciate the gap between where we are and where we have to go. He described this as a persistent and unremitting process.
The CPC is China's governing party, not a competing political party. So its robustness depends mainly on its adaptability and self-governance. One of the things that distinguishes the self-governance of the CPC from that of other political parties is that the CPC recruits members according to specific standards and subjects them to strict discipline. The party rules hold party members to higher standards than those of the country's laws. Throughout this series, we'll be exploring topics related to presidency and how governance is practiced in China. To stay up to date on the podcasts, visit the Beijing Review website, bjreview.com. Find us on YouTube or Spotify with the tag Beijing Review, or look for us where you get your podcasts. I'm Lu Yan in Beijing. Thanks for listening to the Governance Podcast. Bye for now.